What's going on, Canucks fans, and welcome to episode 4 of Blackfish. I'm Tyson Cole. We've got Dave Hall here and Jake Fraser making us look pretty, hitting switches in the back. And you might notice a different background. I'm up in Kelowna visiting some family, and it's a lot better than my blank wall, I'll tell you that. I just want to say this morning we lost a Canucks legend. John Garrett, Cheech, suddenly passed away. So sad. I remember so many of his calls with him and Shorty. That's one of the pairings I grew up listening to, and it was so awesome to hear their banter between each other. They were so fun. They gelled so well together. And it was really sad because, he was on the road. He was covering the Vegas Golden Knights and Utah Mammoth series. So it's obviously such a devastating loss for everybody in the Canucks fan base. Dave, do you have any words on Cheech? What he meant to you?
Yeah, I turned over. I mean, unfortunately, these days, the first thing you do is you kind of reach for your phone and just kind of gather your stuff for the day. And like the first thing I see is that, and it just, he was such a salt in the earth kind of guy. And you kind of think about, such a tough season to watch as a Canucks fan. With the Canucks being how bad they are, and this is no slight on anyone, running these games, but you can only imagine just like how he just had a way to make games fun. And you can only imagine, in some of the tough days in February of this season, it would have just been so great to have him on. And just such just seemed like such a genuine guy. I never unfortunately got the chance to meet him, but he just seemed like such a good guy. The big life lesson that he truly leaves is just to not take life too seriously. And he'll be greatly missed, and just a really sad day in Canucks history.
Of course. We all feel for the family and friends. Our condolences go out to him. I do have a story about Cheech. I actually never met him at the rink, as this is my first year covering the Canucks at Rogers Arena. I used to work at the Keg in White Rock, Morgan Creek Keg, and I served him one time. And so this is before, I was just writing still. Didn't have any media credentials or anything, and I was just fanboying a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, it's Cheech. Like, it's John Garrett. And he,
awesome.
It was so cool because I said, introduce myself, and I heard the voice. I'm like, I didn't even see his face. I'm like, I know who that is. It's John Garrett. So his legend will live on in Canucks history forever.
I got to ask, did he put ketchup on his steak?
No, he was, I think he got a prime rib. So that comes with au jus. On a lighter note, let's move on. And we had our meeting this week. We have a weekly meeting to kind of go over what we're going to talk about on the show for the following week. And we come across something pretty interesting. We saw this prospect. He played for Shawnigan Lake U18 in 2018-2019. Had 27 goals and 55 points, 35 games. You know who I'm talking about, Dave?
I don't know, but I think he's doing a good job of making us look pretty.
Making us look pretty. That's right, everybody. Jake Fraser has an elite prospect page. So we checked that out, and he actually showed us that he has a YouTube highlight reel package, which you can go find. It's not going to be hard to find, but we got a clip of him scoring a sweet goal.
Unreal.
Yeah. Here it is. Put it on the screen.
Right, this is my kind of play right here. Just a dog.
Yeah. Dog on the back check.
Here he is.
And then swoop. Oh, what a move.
This is from my neck of the woods in Shawnigan Lake. Absolute filth.
What an absolute stud. It just seems fitting that, he has an elite prospect page and he is our producer. Just give it up for Jake, everybody. What a goal. And what a guy.
We have to say, he only had, there was one person that had 3 more points than him, and that's no other than Dylan Guenther. Scoring goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. So it's not too late right now. Here we go.
Yeah. I mean, you're still young, still at a prime age, Jake. Get back out there, lace up the skates. See how you can do it. Right on. All right, we'll move on. We kind of teased this last time. We have the U18 tournaments going on. Where is it again? Is it Switzerland? Slovakia. Close enough. I mean, we are at the quarterfinal stage right now. We're recording this on Tuesday, so they will officially have kicked off by the time you're hearing it. But we got some heavy hitters. We got Czechia and Finland and Canada versus Sweden. I mean, if those are 2 first-round matchups, that's pretty crazy. Group A finished Slovakia 1, Canada 2, Finland 3, Latvia 4. And Group B was USA 1, Czechia 2, Sweden 3, Denmark 4. Wyatt Cullen, I see him all over your social media page right now, Dave. He leads the tournament in scoring. He scored an absolute beautiful goal that you clipped, but he's also tied with another Swede here, Elton Hermanstrom. I believe he
Yeah.
is also draft eligible, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what have you seen? I don't know if you're getting up at 5 a.m. to watch these games, Dave, but I know you're watching all the highlights. So what do you have to say about those two guys?
Yeah, to be fair, typically I would. Unfortunately, I've been kind of sick as a dog this past weekend, so this whole weekend was a bit of a write off for me. But I have been watching the clips and the games after, just through some sources I have. So one thing that, like, you mentioned Hermanson. For me, he's been Sweden's top guy, and I'm not surprised. He was probably supposed to be. He's a guy that I'd be pegging somewhere around that 15 to 20-ish range. I mean, depending on he kind of seems a little bit like a target who could slip a little bit, like super skilled, all the skill in the world, has a little bit of bite to his game, but he has a real, and this is kind of a common issue with a lot of players in this draft. He does have a bit of an engagement, I don't know if I want to call it issue, but an engagement problem where he does tend to take shifts off. And so we all know me. I'm a leave it all on the table, compete kind of guy. And so for me, that is one thing that does concern me. And I do wonder if he's a little bit, if his skill is dynamic enough. Sort like if we're talking Vancouver Canucks esque, it's almost like Jonathan Lecker-Mackey esque, where like I wonder just how far his tools are really going to transfer. But he should be one of those players to definitely look at with that Canucks second pick. So,
And Wyatt Cullen.
yeah, Wyatt Cullen. Sorry, he's he's an interesting one to me because for me, he was a player originally, even before this tournament. Like I was wondering if, again, a Canucks target with that Minnesota pick, maybe even the second round pick, like the first pick in the second round. Now this tournament, he's just turning all the heads. At this point, some player, I know Cam Robinson, a good friend of mine, like he has him going as high, like he thinks he's sneaking into the top 10. Um, I like for me,
Wow.
for me, I just don't know. I still find that a little bit early. I just, he is a slight player. He might be the best skater in this draft, or if not the definitely one of them. He's a super elusive, game breaking speed. Once he gets going, he's really hard to catch, and he's very fluid and slippery in the way that he creates. I don't know with his. I just wonder if that offensive ability is going to truly translate into like a number one star. So for me, I really like him. I think he's a really good offensive upside bet. For me, I don't know if that's a top 15 type of bet. For me, that's a bit of a Canucks take him at 24 type of upside swing, kind of like a Mathis Preston, where there's offensive upside and that's why you're taking him. But I just don't know if there's enough in that all around game to warrant a top 10, if not top 10 or top 15 pick.
That's a crazy high projection for a guy who wasn't like, he was a target for hopefully the second round pick of the Canucks. I end of the first, early second, but
that's just me.
I always try and I don't want to overreact to these U18 tournaments.
It's important not to.
Yeah. So if he's leading the tournament, I can only imagine that he's moving up. He's moving up those draft boards, and that's where I would kind of be concerned.
Now, one thing I will say is like one thing that's super impressive is so he plays for the National Development Program. He goes in there. I believe he was 5'5", maybe 5'6". He's now 6 foot in like just over a year. Like he's shot up. So that's one thing. Like he has all the skill in the world, but when he was 5'6", 5'7", 5'5", you're kind of looking at him like, okay, that's unfortunate because he's got tons of skill, but you can't take a 5'5" player seriously when you're up against all these 6'4" behemoths. But yeah, he's shot up like a cannon. So super encouraging. And, there is something to that. Maybe he continues to develop and, fills out a pretty nice NHL body. But
now let's talk about some Canadians, because before we went live here, we kind of talked about Damian Zilkin. Is that how you pronounce it? Dima Zilkin. Yep. I mean, he's got 7 points. Yeah, he's 5 goals. I think that leads the tournament in goals. So I don't believe he's draft eligible this year. I think it's next year. But for him to already be doing this at the U18s, I mean, pretty impressive. And he's going to be someone to watch next season. talking more about the Vancouver. Oh, unless you had something on Zilkin.
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Talking more about, the Vancouver ties. We've got Ryan Lynn and Mathis Preston. Lynn has 6 points. Preston has 5 points. They're also projected to go in the first round. Ryan Lynn probably won't be there at the Canucks second pick, but Mathis Preston definitely has a shot. What have you seen from them? And I mean, how would you compare? Because Keaton Verhoff's in this tournament too. He's supposed to go top 3. He's got 4 points. Ryan Lynn has 6 points. What are you seeing out of those two players? And
yeah, so starting with Mathis Preston, like he's been one of my favorites this entire year. So much fun. He's one of those players that he garners so much attention just because he's a high flying burner. That he's able to make that highlight reel kind of rush play super fun. And it's nice to see he had some injury problems this year, and hasn't had the best draft eligible season. So now that he's with his peers, he's looking just as dangerous as we expected him to. And he's a guy for me, again, just like, Hermanson, as I mentioned, he does have some of those, engagement issues. Sometimes he tends to take shifts off, but when he's going, he's a ton of fun. And he's like Wyatt Cullen. He's that kind of offensive upside bet that I think if he's available, that he's a little bit on the smaller side. So I'm thinking he might even be a guy that slides to the second round. Like he's a classic case of a guy, like a pure offensive burner that just, he doesn't have that all around game that warrants a first round pick. And so a lot of teams like that size, that center, there's a lot of centers available, big doggish centers that are available that I think would probably go ahead of him, that maybe were once considered second rounders. So I do think Mathis Preston is a candidate to definitely slide, definitely to their second first round pick, but maybe even that second round pick. And if he's available with that second round pick, their first one, he's a steal. Like if you could make out like a bandit, like a Gavin McKenna, Dejanay, let's say, and then a Mathis Preston with your first 3 picks, I just think that's an incredible haul to start the biggest draft of the franchise history. So I really like him. There's just some questionable, traits in his game, and obviously a smaller stature that warrant some concern. In terms of Verhoff, he's a little bit tougher because he's going to be one of those classic ones where you're kind of overanalyzing a little bit. But I'll be honest, like I was expecting a little bit more. He hasn't played bad, and that's not really an indictment on his game. He has played good, and I believe he had 3 assists last game. Like he's been playing good. Do not get me wrong. But there's all this talk. We talked about Keaton Verhoff last week, and there's all this talk about that if he stayed with the Victoria Royals, he would, dominate. He'd put up a point per game and just be absolutely dominant, no questions asked. And we're judging him too hard for being in the NCAA. Well, he's now against U18 competition, and while, like I said, he hasn't played bad, it's kind of one of those tournaments where if that's the case, you're really hoping that he just purely dominates this tournament. And for me, he hasn't really done that. He hasn't had that game where he just truly takes over. Whereas Ryan Lynn, in that same game, we'll call it a points game where Verhoff had 3 assists. Ryan Lynn dominated. He was the team's best defenseman and probably has been the entire tournament. And so for a guy like Ryan Lynn, who in my opinion is one of the smarter defensemen in this class, the downside to Ryan Lynn is his size, and it's going to be one of those detriments that unfortunately make him have him slide to that mushy middle of the first round, maybe even later. But if he's, a couple inches taller, I don't think there's any question that he's in the running, maybe not for top 3 pick, but definitely for, a top 8 for sure. But I think he's definitely going to be slipping, probably to the 15-20 spot.
I got a name to put on your radar, Dave. And well, let's be honest, you probably already know who it is, because what prospect don't you know at this point? But I was just going through the top scorers for this tournament, the U18s, and I stumbled upon a 16-year-old from Finland, Luka Santala.
Yep.
This guy looks good. 13 U18 games this season for Team Finland. He's got 11 goals, 8 assists, and 19 points. I believe he's playing the U20 at, I don't know how to pronounce that, Kiko Espo, U20.
Oh.
So he's playing with guys 3 years older than him at most, and he's got 7 goals, 5 assists, 12 points, 25 games, half point per game player. he looks like he's going to be good for the next year's draft. So someone to just put on everybody's radar. We won't dive too much into him, but we do have a news about another Canucks prospect, and this was a few weeks ago. But we were talking about Kieran Dervin. Canucks drafted in the 3rd round in 2025. We saw that he committed to Penn State, and we thought that was a great move. But Dave, something happened.
Well, I mean, yeah, and we apologize. We did miss this last week. This happened 2 weeks ago. Probably should have talked about it last week, but we didn't cover it. But yeah, so I don't know. I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it. But it's one of those curious situations because if you look at Penn State's, if you looked at their roster for their very last game of this season, you can basically cross out every single one of their forwards. There seems to be a bit of a mass exodus from Penn State, whether that's a pro signing or just hitting the transfer portal. And now we're getting decommits. So it is a little curious, like I don't want to speak too firsthand because I don't, I've talked to some people that like really follow the NCAA religiously, and Penn State is always, they're not. It's not the school to go to if you truly want to develop. Like it never seems to be like the school that gets all the top players, which we saw this year. Yeah, they had Gavin McKenna and Jackson Smith, but for the most part, they're not really gathering like the top brass of kids. But it is interesting because for a player like Kieran Dervin, he kind of struck me as a player because of all the players leaving. He may have gotten a top 6 look. Like he may have been one of Penn State's, somewhat go-tos. And so there was going to be some good deployment opportunity for him. And now he decommits and commits to Michigan, which, I mean, we all know, powerhouse. He's going to have a nice run at a good, solid run at a Frozen Four national championship. But at the same time, you look at that roster and it's just stacked. Like Michael Hage is returning, Horkoff, all these players that I don't even know if, like, I'm assuming he's going to be 3rd line, if not 4th line at this point. So it's one of those, like, with a player like Kieran Dervin, it's probably the long game anyways. Like, I don't think he's going to be playing 1 year at Penn State and signing his pro ticket. So, he's probably hoping that next year is a bit more of a developmental in the gym kind of year. And then he kind of takes that next step in his sophomore season. But I just found it a little bit interesting just in terms of, the fact that everyone seems to be leaving Penn State, and B, that, he kind of takes a bit of a hit and opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. If you're a Canucks fan, you want to see your players develop, right, as quickly as possible. And I feel like he would have had a better chance to do that at Penn State with higher minutes, elevated role. But for him, like, maybe he just wants to go win, and he's going to go win in Michigan. So you can't really fault him for that.
Well, you're going to win, and you're also like you're joining a top class school. Like their facilities are fantastic. Like you're joining a culture that's built around winning and developing, right? And so
and then he's going to come to the Vancouver Canucks.
There you go. There you go.
Hopefully, I mean, polar opposite that would be. Anyway, Vitaly Pinchuk.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. He chooses Nashville. He signs KHL star. Just doing some digging into his stats. Like he's continued to progress ever since he kind of made the full-time jump over to the KHL. He had 14 points, 61 games, 22 and 43 points in 66 games. And then this year he exploded with 66 points in 65 games. He's a 6'3", 203-pound, 24-year-old centerman from Belarus, and the Canucks don't get him. Apparently, according to Rick Dhaliwal, the Canucks were in the mix, but didn't seem like, he was like Vancouver was a final consideration for him. I believe it was Nashville and LA were the final 2 teams, and he obviously signs in Nashville. The Canucks, I mean, I wrote about this over at CanucksArmy today. Some of the best moves that Alvin made during his tenure. And one of them I put was the Andrei Kuzmenko signing, because bringing him in was kind of crazy because the Canucks didn't have long success of winning at the time, but they were still able to entice him enough to come over here. But then, it didn't end very well, and he moved on. And it's another Dan Milstein client with Pinchuk. So maybe that is why he didn't come to Vancouver, even though the opportunity arguably is better in Vancouver than it would be in Nashville.
Yeah, it just seemed, always at the party, but never getting a chair. It just like, I don't know. I'm not surprised the Vancouver Canucks didn't land him. I will admit, I am a little shocked that it ended up being Nashville. everyone that I've talked to, it sounded like pretty much every single team at least poked around on him. Like at this point, he is considered the top free, European free agent. So, I'm pretty sure every team definitely checked in. But I was a little shocked not only to hear Nashville, but that LA and Nashville were the two finalists. I actually heard a couple other teams that were, high on his ranks. So little surprised that it was Nashville.
You care to share, Dave?
No. I mean, I heard Philly was high up there. Like I thought there was some ties to him. There's a couple other teams that I had some quote unquote intel on, but obviously that was wrong. And Nashville for me came not at a left field, but definitely creeping towards left field for sure. But yeah, they're getting a good player. I mean, like he's the first thing that jumps off with him is 6'3". He's an awesome player. Like in tight, he's a lot of fun. He's got really nice hands. I do question, the skating could definitely use some work. He's not a burner by any means. The nice thing about him is I don't think he needs to be. I think he's going to get a lot of his goals, within that crease zone. Like he has a really lanky body that he's able to, basically make defenders look foolish around in tight. So that's really fun. I just, one thing I always in my viewings I always wanted to see a little more from him was the physicality. Like he is a big body. You kind of wish that he used his body a little bit more, in terms of just that strength and board battle stuff. But yeah, a good one. He was playing with a really good line. Like his line, he was actually the third scorer of his other line mates, 2 Americans, and that line basically dominated. But you know what? On a positive note, like looking forward, I do think there's still some names that the Canucks could go for. Like I've often said, like when I was doing my digging, I wrote this at CanucksArmy. Pinchuk obviously stood out, but for me, Igor Vinogradov, he's a guy that I have high on my list. He's actually signed to next year, but there was some rumblings that maybe there could be a way to get him over. But if he doesn't come this year, that's a name that the Vancouver Canucks and every team are likely going to be poking around big time next year. He's a guy who has just as much skill as Pinchuk, but actually, in my opinion, uses that size very well. And he's just a ton of fun. So Igor Vinogradov, he's just a ton of fun. You play. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to butcher the name of the team. But he's a guy that I'd be looking at for next year. So don't land Pinchuk, but at this point, who are they landing? So it's not too much of a surprise.
There's a creative nickname in there that we can come up with vinaigrette, something about a salad. We'll come up with it if he signs in Vancouver, but that won't be for another year. It's really dwindling down for a prospect roundup, Dave. So we'll just go over there. We'll quickly hit it. Braden Coots, Prince Albert Raiders have tied 1-1 with the Medicine Hat Tigers. Prince Albert won 8-3, I believe. 8-3. Coots had 2 assists, 4 shots, and what's so impressive, 9 for 12 in the faceoff dot.
Oh, yeah.
And then game 2, 5-0 loss, 0 points, -3, not his best game, 3 shots on goal. But again, 7 for 10 in the faceoff dot. So what is that? 16 for 22? That's really, really impressive. That should be like 72.5%. Quick math. Here we go. I don't even know if that's right. I'm just guessing.
I really hope it isn't.
75% and 78%. So I just added them. Divided them. There we go. There's the quick math into Tyson's head. But I believe they play tonight. So game 3 will be, you'll see it by the time this is released. So hopefully Braden Coots has a couple goals here. Have you noticed anything in his game, particularly in this series, that you wanted to highlight?
Not, I mean, his assists, I believe we have a clip right here. Like his first assist was a nice one, but this second one, obviously working the power play, but he's on the half wall. And, the camera thought that he scored, but it was just such a perfect backdoor pass that it looked like it was him. But that's those are the kind of plays he makes. And he had 2, like, as you mentioned, 2 assists in that game. I thought game 2, it was probably Prince Albert's worst game this entire playoffs. So it wasn't like Coots. That was probably his worst game as well. Like no one looked good. Goalie did well. Credit to Medicine Hat's netminder. He definitely played well, but I thought I don't know if they got cocky after an 8-3 victory at home, but game 2 was not their best effort. So I'm expecting a much different result tonight, aka tomorrow when you're listening to this. And I'm expecting not only Coots but the entire team to kind of bounce back with a better effort. So but love the faceoffs. He's still up to, one thing I did notice on the negative is I did find him, and we didn't see this in the first 2 rounds a lot, but some uncontested giveaways. Like, just a couple of like blind passes to no one that I just thought he could have used a little bit more patience with the puck, which is again something that I've never really knocked on him before. So just something that I noticed in both games, even though he played well in game one. I thought specifically the first period of game one, there was just just a couple of odd plays that I just didn't think he was playing very well. He ended up turning it up, about midway through the game, but just something I noticed.
Yeah, I remember you text in our group chat saying, "Oh yeah, Coots kind of looks a little sloppy. Like he doesn't look right. He's
Yeah.
not taking over the game as he normally would." Which odd sight to see. I will say though, it was a 5-0 loss in game two. But if you actually look at this, game chart or whatever, it was really 2-0 for most of the game.
Yes.
And then like they scored two, like one empty netter and then another one late. So, it wasn't as big of a lopsided game as you would imagine. Let's move over to the OHL where we got Gabe Sherratt. Him and his Kitchener Rangers are up 2-1 over the Windsor Spitfires. Game one, 4-3 overtime win, 0 points, 2 shots on goal. Same scoreline in game two and a 2-1 loss. Or win, sorry. My L's and W's somehow look similar. We got to work on that. Game three was a 4-2 loss, but he had an assist, Dave, and it was a +1. What have you seen in Gabe Sherratt in this Eastern Conference final?
Yeah, with the assists, I know we got a clip of that one too. The assist was really nice too. From his knees, he kind of wraps around the net here and just puts it right into the slot. Maybe a little bit lucky that it goes right out to the guy, but credit to him. Like the one thing that I just keep on harping about him, and this is, I got Jacob to clip this one as well, is just like, if you're not watching his games, you're not going to get he's not going to get a lot of credit because, he's not showing up on the score sheet all the time. But the things that Gabe Sherratt does, like, there's something to be said about a 6th rounder that gets drafted in June, goes to his first training camp and comes out, goes back to the OHL with an NHL contract in his hand. Like that there is something to be said about that. And I think it's the way that he plays. And like what they saw is exactly what I harp on all the time, is that this guy works like a dog on the bone. So the clip that I provided Jake to show is him killing a penalty shorthanded. Watch this. He comes in, chips the puck past him. Great. Goes behind the net, loses it, but then he's battling 3 guys, wins the battle, puts it in the corner. Now he's battling 4 Windsor Spitfires, shorthanded, comes up with the puck, drives the net, hits the post, almost scores. Like these are the stuff that I harp on. Like for me, I don't try to make it seem like I think Gabe Sherratt's going to be a top 6, guy. For me, he just seems like one of those 6th-round picks that you bet on because he's going to grind your face off. He's a 3rd line, 4th line grinder. That's probably all he caps out to be. But there is something there where like he's got a really good shot. Like I don't want to say Kiefer Sherwood-esque, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Sherwood because he's got that really nice shot. He doesn't stop. He's going to be one of those guys that hits everything that moves, and he just plays that grind your face down 3rd line energy role. So I just think and like I said, he has an NHL contract. Hasn't even been with the system for a year. I do think he's a name that people should keep an eye on. And I haven't been able to talk to him or any of his camp to actually find out what he plans to do next year. But I am wondering if he's a candidate to go over to Abbotsford. He is gonna, if he does return, he is going to be an overager. And so he can't go to the NCAA because he's signed. So I do wonder if he lands in Abbotsford. And I don't know. He's just a name that he's never going to hit the score sheet, but he just always catches my eye for plays like that. So I just I have to give credit to him always.
Yeah, that clip, I didn't see that one before. That was for sure dog on a bone, especially with how many guys he was taking on there.
4 of them.
Yeah, I know,
on.
and he hit the post. He almost scored.
Yeah.
All right. We talk about the centers now, Dave. Centers in this draft class. Center position is what the Vancouver Canucks need the most. You look organizationally within their depth, they don't have a lot of them and not a lot of quality ones. Unfortunately, this draft class, at the top, it's not a center. There's 2 wingers and a crop of defensemen, but there is one center that's kind of making his way up there. And you might have heard the name before, Caleb Malhotra, 6'2", 183-pound left shot centerman. What I was also surprised to see, Dave, is he sometimes wears an A as a 17-year-old when you've got, like, it's a stacked team, with a lot of NHL draft picks, and he's the one that's wearing an A. That just goes to show the leadership. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself. 29 goals this year, 55 assists, 84 points in 67 games. In the playoffs, he is just crushing it right now. 10 goals, 9 assists, 19 points in 11 playoff games. Obviously, I believe he plays tonight, so that'll be different from when you hear this, if he gets any points tonight. But yeah, I just thought we'd kind of run through the same kind of traits and see, where Malhotra stacks up. So we'll start with the skating. From what I've seen, I don't think he has the greatest first step, but once he gets going, he can be really fast. Are you seeing kind of the same thing?
You nailed it. Like he's got good agility. He's got, I think with a little more power, I think he does have the ability to get faster. But you're right. When he circles in his own zone and starts building up the momentum, he shows the ability, at least at this level, to leave defenders in the dust and kind of burst up and leave them in the wind. But I wouldn't call him a burner. I think his skating is maybe just a bit above average. I don't think it's a knock on him. And for a player like him, I do think it's a trait that probably could get better with a little bit of a little bit more power in his legs. So yeah, I agree. He's got a bit of a a taller stance in his stride, and I think that's a bit of a detriment to his skating. But yeah, when he gets going, he definitely has some speed for sure.
Yeah, just some of the highlights I saw. What you said is perfect. Like, he has to build up that speed, but then once he gets it in the neutral zone, like, he's shifty enough to get around defenders and set them up well heading into the offensive zone. He's more of a playmaker, but let's talk about his shot, because what I noticed in the highlights, I just big highlights guy.
Sure.
He seems to score a lot off the rush. Like, can beat goaltenders, with that speed once he picks it up. But I didn't see too many times where he's kind of, picking his spot, beating a goaltender one-on-one, like traditional snipers do, Dave.
No, you nailed it. We'll get to his playmaking after
this. For two, let's go.
Yeah, no, you nailed it for sure. We'll get to his playmaking, but like he's and because of him building that speed up from his own zone, like he's dangerous off the rush. Like that's his bread and butter in terms of goal scoring. He's like, to be honest, you can go through his whole pass, and he's not really been a prolific goal scorer. Like, he's not really a go-to goal scorer. Yes, he's really shot up this year, but he's either scoring backdoor tap-ins, like, because he's planted himself in front of the net, or he's scoring off the rush. Those are the two ways that he's scoring. And credit to him, he's obviously worked on a shot, because he does have the ability to get that shot off quick and powerful. I do think so I don't know if all the goals that he's scoring at this rate are going in at the NHL level. Some of them are really blowing past the goaltenders, but credit to him. Obviously, his shot is good enough, and we can only work with the level that he's at right now. But yeah, I agree. Like, you're not going to get that half wall snipe show that we see from the Gavin McKennas and Ivor Stenbergs. And so for me, that is a concern. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, the concerns, but he isn't a natural goal scorer, and but his playmaking, that's where he really thrives. And we'll let you start off with that one if you'd like. But yeah, we'll talk about that next.
I mean, I was just going to say, you alluded to it, so you go ahead. I started the last two, so.
Sure. Like, the thing I love about him is, so we're going to talk about a few centers today, and the one difference for me that makes him against, like, let's say a Tynan Lawrence is, and we see this from, a Gavin McKenna and Ivor Stenberg, is the ability to slow the play down and draw in defenders to come to him before he makes like a really cheeky pass. Like, some of the backhand backdoor feeds that this kid is making are elite. Like, he's showing some very, very strong playmaking ability. And again, it comes down to the ability where he doesn't have to kill you with speed, but he's killing you with smarts and pulling you in before he ultimately just finds a really cheeky, creative backdoor feed or something like that. So his playmaking is definitely the trait that stands out, and it's going to be the factor that really propels him to the next level if we're talking about an offensive driver. He's just got really, really good vision.
Yeah, that's what I have written down here, elite vision. But you also bring up a point of how he draws defenders in, but what he does after to feather the puck,
yes,
over to the other his teammates is something that is so fun to watch. Just, yeah, like you said, you described it as cheeky, and I think that's kind of the best words. Like, hey, come and get it. Never mind, So I like that. What about his puck control? From what I have, pretty good. It's not fantastic. He does dangle once in a while, but I wouldn't say like he's a dangler in EA NHL 26.
Yeah, no, exactly. He's not going to wow you with like, flashy one-on-one, I just burned you through the legs kind of guy, but he is really good in small spaces, which is kind of what's going to really help him progress to the next level because he is able to kind of fend defenders off. And again, with that drawing in ability, that's where he kind of burns you. But yeah, he's not going to be scoring your highlight reel even off the rush. Like he's going to shoot more than he is try to deke through you like you might see from like a Gavin McKenna or something like that. And I only bring Gavin McKenna and Ivor Stenberg up only because like right now we're talking about potentially a third overall pick, second overall pick. So I think it is rightfully so to compare him to those. And so I don't think he has that ability to break ankles or anything like that. But in tight, he does work well in those tight spaces. So a little bit of escapability in there, but overall, I wouldn't call him a dangler by any means.
And something I notice is it's puck control is more than just dangling and everything. I see him wheel around the offensive zone and he's got defenders on his back, but he's able to push off that pressure, right? He's not letting you get to that puck that's on the inside, right? And he's using that 6'2" frame and he's only going to get bigger. He's 17, 6'2", 183. Like he's going to put on the pounds. So he's just going to be able to add that added element further at the NHL level. Hopefully that translate. Malhotra, common last name. What do you remember him for? His defensive play. So tell us about Caleb's defensive play compared to his father Manny.
Yeah, I think that's his I don't know if I'm piling in two topics here, but his defensive play and two-way game. His two-way game is what makes his game. He's super responsible in his own end. Doesn't cheat for offense. He's not a burner, but he skates well enough that he's able to get back in the play. Constantly hounding pucks, and he's always making sure that he's in the right spots as a centerman. So, like for me, he's one of the few pure centermans in this class. Like, even with a Viggo Björck, who we'll talk about, there is questions of is he a centerman at the next level? Well, Caleb Malhotra is. He's responsible. He's tight with his defensive responsibilities. He's got a good active stick. I do think he will need to put on some size, especially once he hits that pro level. Like 183 pounds is still slight, and it shows in his game. He's not really hitting you. Like for me, like I really do see him as like a Braden Coots. Like him and Braden Coots are basically the same player. I think Caleb Malhotra maybe has a little bit more upside, but I really do think that they're basically the same player in that, they're both responsible. They're going to do everything they can on both ends of the ice. And they're not going to wow you with big ice hits, but what they're going to do is make sure that they're always in your face so that you're coughing up pucks. He's forcing offenders to make a quick play, which just ends up being either a turnover or just a poor play. So overall, he's all over the ice and just super responsible. So.
All right. What do you think he needs to improve on, Dave?
He's one of those players, and this is why he's being talked about, as a third overall pick. Some even think a second overall pick. He's going to have to get a little bit bigger. The way that he plays the game at the pro level, he is going to have to, pack on some pounds. I'm not overly concerned about it. Does have to get better in the face-off circle. I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but he was by no means, a face-off savant at the OHL level. So that's something. And then, I don't know if you're wanting to move on here, but I guess if that's the case, I'll just leave it with you with this. I'm concerned. I'm okay with the third overall pick, but I am concerned that the Canucks might think of him as a top 2 pick because I do think there's a couple things playing into his game right now. He's playing on a Brantford Bulldogs team, which was the top scorer by a quite large margin in goal scoring. They had, I think, 30 more goals than the next team. They had 4 players in the top 15 in scoring. Their team is a powerhouse. They're a goal scoring powerhouse. That's not to say anything bad about Caleb Malhotra, but it is something to take in consideration that if you're going to expect this like high powered offensive guy at the next level, I don't know. Some people say a 1C. I don't know if he is a 1C. Like I really don't. I don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that he's not a 1C. I think having up the middle of Braden Coots and a Caleb Malhotra, I think you're winning games like that, and you've got 2 assistant captains right then and there. I think you're winning playoff games. So I'm not too worried about it. My concern is that all these Canucks fans are getting really excited about the gaudy numbers. That pretty much the first time he's ever put up these numbers. And they're saying, oh, there's our 1C ready to go, packaged up. Let's take him second overall. Like, for me, I really think you need to watch his game a little more and take a step back and just realize what he probably is. And that's probably just a Bo Horvat, good 2C on a winning team. Not a bad thing. Let's go for it. But I'm just like, I do want to kind of temper the expectations just a tiny bit.
So I was going to save this for later, but you brought it up. And so, no. You brought it up. So I'm going to talk about it.
Go.
Well, first thing, just going off what you said, if Braden Coots, like, if that's his comparable, I don't really want him. I don't want two Braden Coots on this team. I want them, like, you already have that. You got to swing a little higher, in my opinion. But, okay, so I'm writing this over at CanucksArmy, and it's kind of a piece framed to be, like you said, temper expectations on Malhotra right now, because yes, it's awesome. He's scoring a ton of goals. Like, he looks great. But like, let's take a step back. And I said this last episode, but like, let's look at where these guys started heading into the year. I don't even know if Malhotra was supposed to be a first round pick, right? I'm just going to do this with Verhoff because this is what I have written down for my notes. So Malhotra on his D-1 in the BCHL. He scored 8 goals, 18 assists, 26 points in 44 games. And then obviously this season he explodes, 29 goals, 55 assists, 84 points in 67 games. Let me take you back to the 2016 NHL Draft, okay? There was a BCHLer who took off in his draft year and ended up being a top 10 pick over some guys, some defensemen that were projected to go, top 5. Okay? And that's what we kind of see here right now with Caleb Malhotra and Verhoff, right? Like, Verhoff is sliding down, whereas Malhotra's moving up. And it came from the same BCHL and then had an explosion in that year. You want to know what his name is? Tyson Jost. Tyson Jost. So his D-1, 23 goals, 22 assists, 45 points in 46 games. Not bad. His draft year, he was in the BCHL. He exploded. 42 goals, 62 assists, 104 points in 48 games. Astronomical numbers. But like, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Do it.
So the defensemen that were ranked in the top 5 that season, heading into the year, were Jacob Chychrun and Charlie McAvoy. And both of them fell. McAvoy went 14th. Chychrun went 16th. So they both fell, and Jost got taken over them. But who would you rather have right now? Obviously, Charlie McAvoy and Jacob Chychrun, two NHL defensemen that are making, over $9 million per season each now? Over at Tyson Jost, no offense to him, but like, he's a career, like, 3rd, 4th line center, like, depth guy. And that is the same thing we're seeing right now with Malhotra and Verhoff, where Malhotra's having the great season and moving up and up and up draft boards. Also, 2016, Austin Matthews draft. He was the only center drafted before Tyson Jost. So you're kind of seeing the same thing. It's a bad center draft. And so you're seeing the center move up based off 1 year of good production. And then you're letting the guy who, like, Keaton Verhoff and Charlie McAvoy have pretty much the exact same numbers in their first, or in their draft year in the NCAA. 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 points. Charlie McAvoy, 3 goals, 22 assists, 25 points. Like, I'm sorry. I just feel like history's repeating itself a little bit here 10 years later, where you see one guy who shouldn't really necessarily be in that top 10 range, but since the draft doesn't have any centers, he's getting moved up over some guys who were like quality defensemen who have been top prospects the whole draft year who are now falling, like Keith Verhoff. So I just want to temper expectations. Would it be a cool story? Hey, get Manny's kid over here. He used to play here. He might be the coach here. Awesome. Yeah, cool story. But I mean, who cares? Like, who cares about a cool story? You care about production on the ice. You care about winning. And I just feel like if they take Malhotra over one of the defensemen, especially Verhoff, that would be a mistake.
I got no notes. Like that. That's awesome, Tyson. I agree. And like, for me, again, if you take him at 3rd overall, I think there's some justification. I can live with it. I just don't think you don't pass on
Can't do
either
it second.
Stenberg or McKenna.
And I'm not trying to pile on Malhotra. He's having a fantastic season. He
Yep.
deserves to shoot up the rankings. But I'm just saying, like, you're in a top 3 position. Like, I just wouldn't take that guy.
No.
There's too much higher quality for long. Like, he put up 26 points in the PCHL last year.
Yeah.
26 points.
No, he's never put up numbers, like big numbers like that. Like even when he was younger, point per game, like, which is fine. But at that level, like, I mean, I was just talking before air. This isn't comparing the two by any means. I'm just like throwing this out there. At the same age, I just saw Ben Berard sign an AHL contract with Abbotsford today. So congrats to him. I really like him. I live in Duncan, so all good. But he put up 200, I think it was like 260 points in 62 games when he was 15, and like, so
yeah.
like, and, so a point per game at 15, isn't, that's just what I'm saying. Right. And so I agree. I think there needs to, and, everyone, the blood ties to Manny and Steve Nash and all that. That's great. Manny Malhotra was also a lifetime career third line center, which is awesome. Again, nothing wrong with that. But we're talking about second or third overall picks right now. Right. And so, yeah, you bring up a really good point that I completely agree with, that there isn't any centers in this draft, at least not at this point of this draft. And so that's really gonna, rise his stock level. And I think you do need to be a little bit, be a little bit weary of that. So great points, Tyson. Great points.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just saying be cautious. Like, I'm not, if they truly think that, and I mean, based off of 1 year production, I think I want a little bit more, I guess, longevity when it comes to high end rated prospects. Especially if you're picking third overall. And also think about next season. Like, you're not going to be good next season. You're not going to be good in 2 years. It's going to take 5 years. You can wait till next year to get that high end center who could actually project to be the 1C. Whereas if you're taking Malhotra, like you explained, could be like a Braden Coots, and now you have what, 2 middle 6 centers. Now you still need to go out and find another center. So I don't know.
No, and one last thing, just to piggyback on that, that's a really good point, and I do think that fans need to understand that this process, it's not going to be fixed this year. Like this, it's not going to be done in this year's draft. So you are right. Like if you don't get that center this year, don't worry about it. Like that's for next year. There's a lot of really good centers that we'll talk about at some point in time next year. There's going to be more the next, like this is like a 5-year process. So I agree. If the center's not, if that elite center is not there right now, don't go for it. I completely agree.
Thank you. That sorry I rambled on a little bit there. It was yeah. Anyway, we can move on to Wilson. Viggo Björck. Wilson's his brother. 5'10", 172-pound right shot center. He played over in the SHL this year. He had 6 goals and 9 assists for 15 points. And he did so mostly as a 17-year-old, Dave. That's pretty impressive in 42 games. It's no Ivar Stenberg numbers, but when he did play with Ivar Stenberg at the World Junior Championships, like, one could argue that Viggo Björck might have been Sweden's best player.
I don't even think it's an argument.
Put up 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points in the 7 games, en route to the gold medal there. If he wasn't 5'10", he would be up there. He would be up there with the likes of McKenna and Stenberg. But anyway, we must go on. Skating, Dave. What I have is he doesn't really have that high end speed. Thoughts?
No one does. There's no center that does. Like you're not, at least at this point in the draft, like, you're not getting a polished skater. Good agility. Like Malhotra kind of plays a different game, so you don't technically need to be a burner. But skating is definitely, his one area that you'd like to see a little bit more. I do think it's fine. Not that that's, some great analysis, but I don't know. Like he's just not a burner. And so, but I think he plays a nice rugged game that I just don't know if he needs it all the time. So I do think skating is going to be that one detriment to his game other than his size. But I don't think it's by any means, a glaring issue that's going to keep him from making that jump.
His shot.
Again, I'd say slightly, around average. He's not beating goalies with like a wicked wrister. He's scoring his goals by sheer and hard work, and some decent hands. And so for him, I don't think he's that distant shooter like we see from some of the other players. I think he's more of a grind his way out and just score from kind of that kind of that high slot area, kind of around the net. So I think he's just more of a shifty kind of player that's going to score his goals like that over like a real high end release.
Yeah, he's more of a playmaker, you would say?
Yeah.
How's his passing?
Yeah, passing's good. I think he's one of those players that just like he's got sort of like Kale Malhotra, but he's got really good instinct. So he knows where the ice is around. He's got good scan ability. He's constantly looking for his next opponent. I just think for him, he's got the ability to drive the play, which I really like. Like he's a dog on the bone, and because of that, he's only 5'10", but he wins a ton of his battles. And because of that, he kind of gives himself time to make those plays, and he's got nice shifty hands to make that happen. So
Yeah, you kind of touched on it there, shifty hands. So he's pretty good with the puck control. But what about his defense? Because that is something that I noticed quite a bit. He was playing all three situations at the World Juniors. So he's definitely trusted in that role to play defense, not only, on top of, all of his offensive production as well.
When you talk about World Juniors, I mean, we're talking about he's playing top line center minutes with Jew Gardens, like in the playoffs. Like this is Ivers. It's almost unfortunate. Like he made what am I trying to say here? He made history last year at the U20 level. Like he put up 74 points, I believe it was, at the U20 level. Like wow. It's almost a shame that he was coupled with Ivor Stenberg, because Ivor Stenberg put up such incredible numbers that I just think Viggo Björck's numbers are getting put to the side, but they're incredible on its own merit. Like he had a really good season, and like I said, we're talking a player that was playing top line center minutes for an SHL team in the playoffs. So like he's trusted. His coaches love him. Like they want him out. Going back to the World Juniors, like I don't like remember that third game or that final game. It just seemed like he was on the ice at all times. He just was always out there, and that's kind of a thing that's a sentiment that's been going on his entire career. It's just like coaches want him out on the ice because he can be trusted in all three zones, and he doesn't cheat. Yeah, he's not a burner, as we've already alluded to, but he's just working so hard around the ice that he just has this instinct to be in and around the play at all times. And that's defense, that's offense, that's transition, that's everything. He has that it factor that just allows him to just be a difference maker on the ice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I have for compete. He does have a smaller frame, but it doesn't matter for him because he works so damn hard to go retrieve the puck and everything. What do you think he needs to improve on, though, Dave?
Well, like for me, like skating, sure. Like skating is one. I think the only thing he needs to work on really is the one thing that he can't control, and that's him growing a couple of inches, like he's like, there's really, like you already said, I think if he's a couple inches taller, I do think he is the best centerman in this draft. Like for me, he is the guy. He's a top 5 pick, no matter what, if he's a little taller. And I just think, he's a classic case of a guy that's going to slip in the draft. You do wonder, because of his size, is if he is going to play center at the next level. And, especially if you're talking Vancouver Canucks, I had a good conversation with Harman Dial about this over at Canucks Conversation. And, it's one of those things where, I kind of suggested that if there was a player that dropped to the teens, Viggo Björck's a guy that you move that Minnesota pick and you move up to take him. But then Harman Dial kind of pushed back with, yeah, but do you really want Marco Rossi and Viggo Björck as your 1-2 punch, or your 2-3 punch, I guess? And it's a valid point. Like he is smaller, and so he is going to slip. But I do think that he has that ability to be a real nice steal for someone in those teens if he does in fact slip.
Jake Fraser just makes a great point in our chat here. Viggo Björck's dad's 6'2", Wilson Björck's 6 foot. So there is potential to grow there for Viggo. So, I mean, if he does fall because of his height, he grows, I mean, that team is going to get a steal. But I will push back on something here. Are you for sure 100% penciling in Marco Rossi on this team? So who cares?
No, that's what I said too. It's a valid point, but we're also talking 5 years down the road where who knows if Marco Rossi is that guy. But so yeah, but it is something to take in consideration that they already have that, and so they did trade for him. Maybe they do believe internally that he is and this is why this is why it kind of sucks that all this change is happening right now, because these are the questions that need to be answered by the new regime. Like, this is something that they need to decide on if they believe in a Marco Rossi long term, and if Viggo is, you know what I mean? Like, these are the conversations that need to be had right now. So it is a bit tricky organizationally that you're kind of in this limbo.
For sure. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but we'll move on to maybe Tynan Lawrence. What do you think?
Yeah,
This might be a rude conversation.
and it's not meant to be. Like, all these knocks, like, this is why prospects are always like kind of touchy, because you're talking about kids that they're all good players too, and I think Tynan Lawrence definitely shows some traits that do make him an NHL player. I'm constantly left wanting more. That I struggle. I don't even, like, at this point, I don't have him in a top 10 conversation. I know many people agree with that, and that now reflects in their rankings. I just see a really hardworking centerman who has a lot of really good compete traits, which Dave Hall approved
Of that.
Yeah, he competes like a dog. He's really responsible defensively. All of his pluses come from the offensive side, which make him, a nice bet. I really struggle to see some of the offensive potential that I think is there, but there's just some like mechanics that I'm jumping the gun here, but I think at this point we can probably just kind of talk about it all just encompassing. Like, for me, like, even something with a shot, you see, like, he has this, his hands just seem to be like they're stuck in one spot, and there's no dynamic movement in the way that he shoots or even passes. Like, if you watch him, it's just it's kind of hard to explain on video. Like, it's too bad I don't have a clip with me, so I apologize, but I will write an article about him, so catch that at CanucksArmy at some point. But he doesn't seem to have that snap or that dynamic.
Kind of got like brick hands.
That's
like cement in his.
That's the harsh way to put it. That's kind of what I was thinking. I just don't want to say brick hands, because, like, there is some potential there. Like, you do see there is, the want to do it. It's just, I just don't think he has that elite shot. He doesn't have those elite hands. I think he rushes. We talked about Caleb Malhotra, where he kind of draws defensemen in and wills his way to get around them and make a cheeky pass. Whereas I feel like Tynan Lawrence just kind of, he goes at speed, hoping that he can make the play, and just kind of like forces the play rather than drawing the player in. So he's always trying to do it on the run. And for me, I just don't think that's equivalent to like a high end offensive player.
Yeah, from what we'll give him the proper introduction. Tynan Lawrence, 6 foot, 6 foot centerman, left shot, 185 pounds. In the USHL, he started the year there. He had 10 goals and 7 assists and 17 points in 13 games. That's not necessarily killer numbers. Like, he's not dominating at the level that you would have preferred to see. But anyway, he goes to test himself. He signs with BU, the NCAA, and it was a pretty rocky start for him. I believe it was over 5 games that he didn't have a point yet, right? Something like that.
Yep.
Maybe 3. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, he finishes the year with 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points in 18 games with BU. And I never really understood, because he was getting some love in top 3. Like, he's like, oh yeah, this is the best center in the draft, blah, blah, blah. And I saw those numbers. I'm like, really? That's the best we can do? Like, 17 points in 13 games in the USHL? Like, that just doesn't tickle my fancy. His skating, like, it's fine. I find that he doesn't have like really, really good separation speed. Like, he can't burn past you. Like, I watched him go in on the rush, and the defender was skating backwards and holding his own. And I'm like, come on, like, you want to see him kind of burn, like, take the edge, burn him, get around him, open up some more space there. Offensively, like I said, he has a pretty good release, but he doesn't shoot a lot. Like, I don't know. Like, his passing, he was fine. Like, all of this was like, yeah, it's good. It's not great though. I always try to look for that NHL trait, and I don't really, there's not one that really sticks out to me outside of, like, he competes, he works hard. He's good on the back check. He's good. He's got an active stick defensively. But other than that, I don't want to I don't want to poo-poo on the kid, like he's going to be a first round pick, and hopefully he turns that into an NHL career. But I never really believed that there was much behind him going as high as 3 in the draft.
Yeah, for him. And, like we should preface all of this in that, it has been a challenging season for him. Obviously, he had a really good year at the USHL last year, showed really well at the Hlinka as well. And, all signs pointed towards him having a really hot start, got injured, didn't come back till midway through the season. Decides to go to BU midway through the year, which is always challenging. Also, we talk about Caleb Malhotra plays on this huge, like, offensive juggernaut. Well, BU wasn't great. And so it wasn't just him. Like they weren't a very offensively gifted team this year. They struggled. So, for him, one of the younger players in the draft, one of the younger players in the NCAA rather, trying to find his game, coming off of injury. So like there's a lot of factors that really play into him. Not like that's why with the numbers specifically, I do take it with a little bit of grain of salt because it was a challenging year for him. And at some point, like we did with Keaton Verhoff and all these other guys that went to NCAA, kind of have to tip your hat to him and say, "Hey, good for you for trying to carve out." He took a real risk with that. Like he could have easily, again, just like Keaton Verhoff, stayed in the USHL, put up decent numbers, and solidified his spot. But he decided to challenge himself, and it was a risk.
I don't knock him for doing that. Like I commend him for doing that. Like that's awesome.
Well,
McKenna
sure.
did it. Verhoff did it. Like that's kind of what you want to see. I'm just saying that, the production that he had when he went there isn't making me like him anymore.
No. And then what I was getting to is like, it's not just the point. Like there really is. I struggle as you do to see that true separating factor that warrants a top 10 pick. Not even like right now we're talking top 3. I don't like, for me, he's a guy that you take who has really good compete. Everything is just average, as you mentioned. Like there's nothing that stands out other than his compete and defensive nature. So, overall you do see a probable centerman at the NHL level, which is great. But like, a couple of other guys, I just don't know if it's worth that. I don't, I just haven't seen enough offensive upside for him to be in the Canucks pick range. So,
yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I think it would be interesting to go back and look at previous drafts and look at how their centers, how the centers went in the first round and see where these guys would kind of rank up in terms of, because, Malhotra might go as high as 3 because he's the best center available. But on true talent, if you look back at, like, I don't know, the 2024, 2023 draft, there was Connor Bedard, Leo Carlson, Adam Fantilli. How high would he actually go?
Yeah.
I think that would be something interesting that maybe we could do on a previous or on a future show here. But anyway, we had another guy we were going to talk about. We're going to skip over him today because we are running a little long. But Dave, we do this every single time. Who's of these 3? Who's the best skater?
I'm going to go Caleb Malhotra.
Caleb?
Yeah, I'm going to go Caleb. Yeah, I don't by any means don't think he's like super powerful, but at the same time, I think he does have decent top end speed when he gets there. And he's got some decent agility. So I'm actually going to go Caleb on this one.
Funny enough, like just looking at all this, like none of these guys have that elite skating that you really want to see. Shooting.
I'm going to go with Caleb again.
Passing.
See, that's where it gets a little tough. Can I go a tie between Viggo and I'm going to go Viggo. I think Viggo does have this like creative, dynamic ability to him that I do really like it, but it's tough because I think Caleb Malhotra is right there as well. Like that's his best ability. And so I struggle to say Viggo, but I'm going to say Viggo.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dave. Just because last time, I don't know if you remember, but I said my numbers actually don't do ties. So do a tie there. Puck control.
Viggo.
Defense.
See, this is where all 3 of them do pretty well. Like Tynan Lawrence is also up there in this thing. I'm going to say Viggo.
And your favorite, compete.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they're all very competitive. Like I think this is the one trait that stands out for all of them. So like I don't know. I don't really have an answer. Like You pick for me. I don't know. Like I really do think they're like I think it's between Viggo and Caleb.
Yeah.
So let's go Viggo. I think Viggo, he's a true, he has the ability to like drive play and truly get in there. Like there's a difference between being small and playing small, and he does not play small. So
Yeah, totally. And I would probably give the edge to Viggo, and this isn't to hate on Malhotra. He's obviously a hard competitor as well, but just some of the things that I've noticed with Viggo is he has, like, since he is smaller, he has to work hard, like that little extra bit harder to get where he wants to go and get the puck and have the success that he has. So I'd give it to him. But I mean, hey, that's a 4-2 win, 4-2-0 win for Viggo over Malhotra.
yeah, like in my eyes, Viggo is the top center in this class.
Yeah, but it's not going to shake up like that. Not going to shake up like that. Manny will for sure, or Manny's kid will for sure go first. All right. I think we got a couple questions here that we could run through. Questions from the listeners. All right, we've got this one from Craft Beer Guy over on X. Who you got at 3? Because that's where the Canucks will pick. Hopefully not, but this is the way of being a Canucks fan. I mean, I think I made a pretty good point earlier that I think as long as those two wingers go first, that you go defenseman. And I don't really care which one of the 3 it is, Verhoff, Chase Reed, Carson Karls, but one of those 3. I don't think you reach on the center just because of everything I said about Tyson Jost and that comparison there. Dave, what say you?
I will agree on the defense. I will put a name out there, and I do think Chase Reed is the guy. I just think you need everything. I don't really care what you're going for right now. You need everything. So I'm okay. Like you said, I'm okay with 3 of the names. Like I'm okay with Reed, Karls, and Verhoff at this spot. But for me, I'm picking Chase Reed. I just think he has that upside that at 3rd overall, if you're not getting those 2 forwards, that's who we want.
All right, we got another one over on Instagram from Jaden Tasia 12. Will we see the Canucks trade up from the Wild pick to draft a center? And I mean, I think that is kind of a great question. Kind of something we already talked about. If we do see Viggo fall to like say the 15 range, Dave, you think that's an opportunity where the Canucks should take and move up?
Yes, if Viggo slips, then absolutely yes. And like this is what I was saying on Canucks Convo, and then this is where Harman was like, "Well, what about Marco Rossi?" And it's just like I don't care. Like at this point, if Viggo is available at 15, you already have his brother in the system. I would love, like, I haven't been able to get any intel on what he's doing next year, but I would love if he just goes over to Colorado College with Wilson and they just create a dynamic duo over there. Like we talk about the Ruck brothers, but we could literally have a set of brothers in the system as early as next year. So I think he's the clear choice. In terms of centers, I think he's the only one. I do like a guy like Oliver Savanto, but I don't know if I like him for the Canucks, so I don't think I'd be jumping up. It sounds like we're both pretty much on the same page with Tynan Lawrence, so I don't know if I'd be, jumping up to take him. But if Viggo Björck is available at 16, like a Victor Eklund was last year, yes, you absolutely entertain the idea of doing what you can to move up. Because if you can get away, again, let's assume they take like Gavin McKenna. You can get away with Gavin McKenna and Viggo Björck in your first round. I don't actually care that you don't have 4 picks in the top 41 or whatever it is, because those two are like those are 2 high-end difference makers in your prospect system that I just think is way too enticing to pass up on.
So that's interesting. So you would trade the Minnesota pick somewhere in the mid 20s, 32 or 33 and like 41.
I don't no, maybe not all 3.
I don't think you have to trade all that, but yeah, then you could still walk away with 3.
Yeah, and if you do trade all 3, then I would hope they would get some sort of like maybe 3rd or 4th round pick back. But yeah, I don't know if you have to. I think trading those 2 middle picks, that first round and the second might do it, and I think that's fine. I really do. Like I don't think this draft is so strong that like it's tough, because I am also of the mind that at this point acid accumulation is the thing you need to do. This Canucks system just needs a healthy dose and injection of as many prospects as possible, but at the same time you're not finding that upside like a Viggo Björck anywhere else. So yeah, I'm completely fine with that. If you can make away with those 2 players in your first round, you're laughing to the bank.
And just a simple question here: how high would you? Like, what's the cutoff? You know, like, how high do you think you'd have to go? Like, at what point do you see Viggo Björck falling in the draft? And you're like, okay, we got to go now. We got to go get him now. Like 12?
Yeah. If he slips past top 10, I'd be thinking it.
Yeah. Okay.
Like Nesbitt, like Philly with Nesbitt. You know, like if Viggo Björck,
that was a reach, though.
Sure, but you know they got their guy. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not comparing the two players. I'm just saying, like, yeah, if he slides past the top 10, I think Viggo Björck is a player that you definitely. I mean, he's not the only one, too. Like, I think maybe not outside the top 10, but there's a few players that I wouldn't mind them jumping up to take, moving up. So none of them centers, unfortunately, because there's just not a ton.
We'll get to those players in a future episode. I bet. All right. Well, this we went a little long today. Apologies about that, but I think we had some really good conversation. This is usually where we do Prospect of the Week. We said we were going to get rid of it. I'm bringing it back. Give Prospect of the Week to Jake Fraser because that was awesome. And then now, speaking of Jake Fraser, take it to the Tankathon.
Show me potato salad.
All right. I love that reference. All right. We haven't won yet. Is the fourth time the charm.
And our last one.
Holy crap. Winnipeg Jets move up 6 spots to select first overall. San Jose Sharks. This is actually okay. This is okay. San Jose moves up. We like San Jose moving up. They move up 7 spots to select second overall, and your Vancouver Canucks fall to 3. Because, I mean, that's okay. San Jose moves up. They'll probably go Chase Reed or defenseman, and then Canucks could land on Ivar Stenberg. Yeah, that'll be interesting. We actually do have one more show before the draft lottery. We are, yep. Check the schedule that I made, Dave. Come on now. We are actually recording earlier for you guys. Right. We're recording on, next Monday. It will be released on draft lottery day. So you'll have an episode that day to listen to where we will go over our top 16 rankings as we prepare for the NHL Draft Lottery show that night, which we will be live at Greta. Right, Dave?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll be joining the Canucks conversation boys, Jeff.
Getting off the island.
Yeah, the Scarce of Price boys, Rink Wide guys, and obviously the Canucks Convo guys will be making an appearance on their live show. And then afterwards, after the Draft Lottery, we're going to head back to the studio, do a live reaction video. So you will get 2 episodes of Blackfish next week. And it's going to be a big week. Big week. 1 week away as of today, and we will see where the draft lottery balls fall and if the Canucks will be selecting first overall for the first time in franchise history. That'll do it for today's show, though. Jake Fraser in the back making us look pretty, hitting all the switches. For Dave Hall, I'm Tyson Cole. Thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 4 of Blackfish.